Okay, today I wanted to share some full thoughts on the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB, which has been out for a while, but on discount, I do think that this shoe has its merits. So I want to give you my full rundown, top to bottom, chat about the price point and what it could hopefully be in the future, and then a few comparisons as well to let you know where this shoe is sitting. I also wanted to have a bit of a chat about what this means for Brooks moving forward, the introduction of PB obviously being quite significant, because I think for the most part, they have been lacking in the past couple of years. Starting off with some specs here, this is a direct re-release of the Hyperion Elite 4 with the one singular change of the midsole compound. So same upper, same midsole shape and geometry, same outsole. The one thing that's changing is that they're taking their DNA Flash nitrogen infused EVA, which was frankly quite rubbish as a racing foam, and they're swapping it in for a more firm, resilient, but energetic feeling DNA Gold PB foam. I do think it is worth pointing out the irony of that. They stuck with DNA Flash for so long, talking about how energetic it was, how they could tune it to the needs of the athlete. Heard so many podcasts about it, but they finally caved and they've gone for PB, which is a good foam to be fair, but if you spend that long dodging PB, I think it would be better to go with an aliphatic TPU or a TPEE, or come up with something a bit more original. Nevertheless, we're here, PB foam, how good. Starting off with the specs, we've got 40mm of foam here, an 8mm drop down to 32 in the forefoot. New PB foam, which encapsulates a Speedvolt Plus plate, which is an Aris carbon fiber sheet, which has all these little holes carved in it, and it is also tuned to the specific size according to, I guess, the predicted weight of the athlete. So smaller sizes are going to be a bit more flexible, bigger sizes are going to be stiffer to compensate for the differences in weight, which I think is probably a pretty good idea. Probably not something a lot of brands are thinking about. I do respect the technology there. Weight-wise for my size, we're coming in at 214 grams, which I think is right on average for my size right now. We are starting to see shoes creep below 200, going to 160, 170. Honestly though, I don't think I'm going to be too upset, even in 3 or 4 years time, if racing shoes are still coming out at 220 grams. Objectively, they're still a lot of fun to run in. I'm not certain that 20 or 30 grams makes a huge difference in the scheme of things. 215 grams, the way that I see it, is perfectly fine. Starting off with the upper of this shoe, this has got to be one of the best materials that I've seen. It's like a kind of nylon yarn material here, which is woven into a really nice breathable pattern through the midfoot and forefoot. Fantastic feel over the top of the foot. It's flexible, it's fairly soft as well. And then when we get up into the midfoot, that is kind of stiffened up a little bit by this Brooks overlay, and then reinforced with a pretty stiff eyelet chain, which I think gives a fair bit of structure, makes it very easy to lock down securely. Heel counter is fairly flexible, but again, gives a pretty secure hold once you lace the top eyelets up. Not overly padded, but no problems with blisters at all. Really, really enjoyed the way that this upper felt. I would be pretty happy to see this put on any other super shoe that I've tried. Really, really enjoyed the feel here. In terms of the sizing and fit, I would say true to size is the way to go. Secure lockdown through the midfoot, a little bit of extra room ahead of the toes. It's matching up with most Western brands that I've tried. In terms of the width, I would say we're looking pretty standard. Bit of a squeeze through the midfoot, opens up through the forefoot. It's definitely a bit more of a dialed in toe box. It's not got that nice squared off fit that you might find in an Alpha Fly, or even the new Metaspeed series, I would say, has a bit more room up there, but it's no different to most super shoes. If you have issues with them, it's probably one to try on, but if you're someone who's tried a fair few super shoes, this is probably going to be no different. Moving down to the midsole, the combination of this new PB foam with a fairly flat, stiff carbon plate and a pretty gradual geometry gives a ride which is snappy, pretty fast to turn over, but definitely does require a little bit more work through the calf in order to get things to really settle into a pace properly. It definitely earns its super shoe title. I do think it is giving you a distinct performance advantage over your standard speed trainer, but it's definitely not in that top tier of racing shoes. This is along the lines of a Vaporfly, some of those earlier models like an Endorphin Pro. It's definitely not getting up into that kind of big booming marathon racing shoe category. It's going to be useful for people who like a more grounded feel, like to feel the ground a bit more, and like to feel a bit more in control of what the shoe is doing underfoot. It doesn't feel as prescriptive as something like a Metaspeed Edge or Sky Tokyo or an Alpha Fly. CLOX1, it doesn't have that same aggressive geometry. You do just have to do a bit more work, a bit more straightforward, which I think some people will enjoy. I did find myself getting a bit beaten up after a couple of workouts in this shoe, especially through the calf, just having to do a bit more work to get the stiffness of the carbon plate to work with the geometry, but I did still have a pretty good time. And honestly, sometimes it is pretty good to feel sore after a workout, make it feel like you've actually done a little bit of extra work. In terms of where I most enjoyed this shoe, it was definitely in fartlek workouts with quick pace changes. I think that is its main advantage over some of the higher performing racing shoes. It's just a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more grounded, and I find it just that bit easier to accelerate and get up to pace. These shoes feel great once you get up to cruise control and you can kind of settle into that race pace or the pace that you're chasing for the session. This just gets there a little bit faster because of how firm and grounded it is. For me, I would say as a race shoe, this is probably going to be more suited to 5, 10, maybe half marathon if you're a little bit more tolerant to that firmer feel. But for the most part, I think 5 and 10Ks is where this shoe is going to shine for most people. In terms of the stability of this shoe, I would say this is above average for a racing shoe, just on merit of being a bit firmer and having a pretty simple, straightforward geometry, which is very front and back rather than the Adios Pro 4, which has a medial cutout, or the CLOX1, even the Wave Rebellion Pro 3, which does throw you around a bit more. It is just that more straightforward geometry. But I do think it is still a super shoe at the end of the day. This is not going to give you that guidance that you're chasing. Don't go assuming because this is Brooks, it's going to be the similar feel to your adrenaline or stability shoe. It is still a high performance racing shoe, so it's not going to have your back if you really, really need it. A little bit more stable neutral might be the word to use, but it is still a racing product after all. Coming to the price point here in Australia, this is retailing for $350, which I think right now in the current marketplace is not super competitive. I am still excited to see that this shoe exists, but $350 in all honesty, with shoes like the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 for $320, Wave Rebellion Pro Low for $340, Adios Pro for $360, it's just up against some pretty stiff competition, and I just don't think that this shoe offers anything exceptional, which is going to help it get picked amongst the rest. If this shoe wanted to be relevant in this market right now, it would need to sit at that $320 mark where the Vaporfly originally sat, as a pretty simple, straightforward PB4 foamed racing shoe, which it just is. It's not offering anything extra. I think that if Brooks put it that little bit lower, that would be where they might find a bit more audience, I guess. So right now, not the best value. On discount, could be a better pickup if you can pick this up for $300 or under, pick it up for the same price as a speed shoe. You're going to have a lot of fun. Snappy, quick to turn over, does work the calves a little bit more, but as a training shoe, is that always a bad thing? I'm not persuaded. Yeah, it could be okay there, but $350 full price is probably not something I'm jumping on too quickly. Bringing that all together, the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB is a firmer riding, snappy racing shoe which has finally qualified as a super shoe, which is exciting to see. On one side of things, we've got Brooks now entering the market as an actual competitor in the racing and performance space. But then on the other side of things, you could be a bit more cynical and say that it's taken them 5 years to come up with a shoe which is pretty much the same as a Vaporfly, just 5 years later. So yeah, it's two ways to look at it. I am excited to see that Brooks are entering in with PB4 foam. Hopefully they're going to come up with something a bit more exciting with the Hyperion 5, which I do think is going to be a bit of a step up. But then also, it has taken them a long time to figure out that PB plus plate equals a pretty good ride. So yeah, so think of that what you will. In terms of a couple of quick fire comparisons, as I mentioned, up against stiff competition, Deviate Nitro Elite 3 has more bounce to it. The aliphatic is just softer and more comfortable. And I think the ride is a kind of merger, I guess, between that Alpha Fly style competitor and the more lower slung snappy competitor. So I see this as an upgrade over the Vaporfly and the Hyperion, but maybe not quite to the level of being Adios Pro 4, Wave Rebellion Pro, CLOX, not quite that tall just yet. The other one to think about is the Vaporfly itself. Pretty similar feel, honestly. I could go either way. Really like the upper on the Hyperion, but then I do think a slightly lighter weight in the Vaporfly might just give it the performance edge overall. Both 350, 360, honestly, I think in the current market, both of these shoes are a little bit overpriced when compared to the Deviate. So keep that in mind if you're buying full price. The other one that is worth a quick mention is the KD900X from Hyperion. Aliphatic TPU midsole here. A bit more of a flexible carbon plate, which I do think make it a little bit more wild, uncontrolled, with the stiff carbon plate of the Hyperion Elite 4, giving it a bit more direction, a bit more consistency, which could be appealing to some. But realistically, if you're just looking for a fun training shoe, $180 here in Australia make the KD900 very, very attractive. Even if you're going to pick this up for $280, I still think that this could be one to look at as well. Okay, Brooks have got a PB4 foam in their racing shoe now. What does this mean for the rest of their shoes in their lineup? And what does this mean for the brand moving forward? First and foremost, I think it means for the Hyperion Elite series, at very worst, this shoe is going to be pretty good. We've seen this with other brands in the past. As soon as you move to a PB4 foam and a carbon plate, it's pretty hard to make a bad shoe as long as you don't do anything silly with the upper or the outsole and you don't price it at $450 for no reason at all. I think Brooks are going to stick to a more nimble, low profile racing style. We can see that with the Hyperion Elite 5. I've actually tried that shoe on yesterday at work. It actually felt really good underfoot, definitely more nimble, more agile. They've carved out a bit of the PB4 foam, softened it up a bit. The carbon plate has got more flexible as well, which I think is going to make it feel a bit more adaptable, a little bit more, I guess, approachable compared to the stiffness of this one. So I think they can operate in that space pretty comfortably and have a reliable set of fans who want a shoe which is a little bit more in touch with the road. A lot of people are not a fan of the bigger booming style of racing shoes, CLO X1, Alpha Fly, Wave Rebellion Pro. They want something which feels a bit more tangible, a bit more in control. And if they can nail that audience, I think they're going to be just fine. For their performance trainer, their super trainer, the Hyperion Max 3, it's already out. We get the top layer of PB4 foam here, which I think upgrades this ride instantly. Deep bottomless cushion here, top layer of PB4, bottom layer of the old DNA Flash, which feels soft, but not too soft. It's got that kind of structure that you expect from a carrier foam, and combined with a plastic plate here, we've got a ride which is pretty similar to something like a CLO X1, the original, with a kind of deep bottomless cushion, a nice stiff rocker, and a whole lot of foam to it as well. The fit on a lot of these shoes has also been beautiful, fairly rounded toe box, dialed in fit through the midfoot and heel. I'm really enjoying my first couple of runs in this shoe, and again, that just shows what a top layer of PB4 foam can do. Taking that one step further to the Hyperion 3, I believe with the introduction of the DNA Gold in those top tier shoes, I think we've seen a nicer version of the DNA Flash finally make its way into the more strict training models, with the Hyperion 3 now being upgraded to something along the lines of an Evo SL, where it can handle a fair few paces, fair few distances in your training week. I reckon you can take this long. I reckon you can take this into tempo, even threshold zones if you really want. The foam just has a bit more give, a bit more spring back, and with a nice simple geometry, I think it turns over really nicely. $260 as well isn't outrageous on the current market, and I do think that the performance of this shoe can be attributed to the trickle down of those foams from up top. To be fair, I do think a lot of their other daily trainers are going to stay pretty traditional in terms of 10mm drop, not a heap of rockering up front. Foams are going to be on the firmer side of the market, but I do think, again, with that trickle down, we're going to start to see some foams which are just that little bit more energetic, have a bit more to give in some more traditional models like the Ghost, like the Adrenaline. The Glycerin is looking pretty good these days as well, and it is exciting to see. So what does this mean for Brooks moving forward? I think they're going to be an actual competitor in the performance market. I think this is the first time in my memory since starting running 6 years ago when Brooks have had a lineup from racing through to training which is actually relevant with the competition and doesn't get completely undercut on price point for relevant performance. We've now got a racing shoe, we've got a super trainer, we've got an up-tempo model, and I think with those kind of technologies that we're seeing sprinkled in, we could have the ingredients needed to make a really competitive lineup in the next couple of years. I'm really excited. I hope that they continue to innovate. I hope they don't get too complacent and comfortable with some small successes early on. And I don't think they're going to by the looks of the Hyperion 5 and how good these shoes are looking straight up. But yeah, we'll just have to wait to see. Reviews on those shoes are coming pretty soon. Hyperion Elite 5 will definitely be coming in for review as well. Hopefully this was somewhat interesting. Always happy to see more competitors. Let's hope this continues.